Today I'd like to share with you my Philodendron Paraiso Verde. Hello and welcome to Peggy's Tropical Garden, coming to you from the Florida Keys. Hi, I'm Peggy from Peggy's Tropical Garden. I hope you and yours are well. Thank you so much for joining me today to talk about the Philodendron Paraiso Verde. A little bit about how I ended up with this plant. I purchased it from a seller on eBay. It was another one of those situations where I had never seen this plant before. I'm just kind of browsing and I see these leaves and I decided to get this plant. I believe I paid somewhere in the neighborhood of $50 for it, and now it's like a hot ticket item. You can't even find them really in the States, and if you do find them, you're going to end up paying a premium for them. So it's another one of those situations where, go for what you love, go for the plants that you're attracted to, and not necessarily chasing the plants that are highly sought after, because what's highly sought after next month this time might be the plant that you're looking at right now and no one's paying any attention to. So go ahead and grab it. If it's something that you're really drawn to, grab it. With that said, let's talk a little bit about this plant. Now, this plant is highly sought after for its beautiful long-lobed mottled leaf. Look at that variegation, just different shades of green. Now, something about this plant is, if you give this plant optimum lighting, I mean just all the light that's going to make this plant just 100% happy, it will reward you with a solid green leaf. Can you believe that? I read that somewhere, and you know me, I like to experiment with things and I have to find out things for myself a lot of times. I read that, so I put this plant under a grow light and by a window, and it did well. It's been growing very nicely, but the last leaf that it put out was indeed a solid green leaf. So it has since been moved because I want more of this beautiful variegation. Some of the specifics about this plant: the leaves will grow to be about 5 to 10 inches. However, the stems don't get to be extremely long. So it's one of those plants that as it matures, if you want it to continue growing upright, it is a climber. So if you want it to continue to grow upright, you're going to have to give it some kind of support, a moss pole or what have you. I consider this plant to be the perfect house plant. Now, it's one of those philodendrons that doesn't get extremely large. Philodendrons, a lot of them are known for getting the really big leaves. Philodendrons, monstera, huge plant, like for instance, a monstera deliciosa. Pretty common plant, known for its big, beautiful leaves, but that plant will take over a room. It'll look beautiful doing it, but if you're someone who has a small space, you might not, want another plant that's going to get really large. So you still have room for Paraiso Verde. All is not lost. The Paraiso Verde at maturity only gets to be about 10 to 15 inches tall. So it's like, to me, the perfect house plant. It'll give you the big showy leaves that will definitely grab your attention with the modeling and things like that. And it won't take over your room. This plant is native to the tropical rainforest, although it has also been found in swamplands, which I found interesting. As a tropical plant, you can guess it likes warmer temperatures and lots of humidity. You live in an area that does have cold climate, say under 50 degrees, this plant will suffer from the colder temperatures, and you're probably going to want to be able to take it indoors away from the cold. Now, It loves humidity. This is one of those plants that just, I can honestly say I see the difference in this plant. The more humidity I give it, the greener it is, the plant is more rigid. It's not limp at all. I definitely have seen changes in this. I had it away from my humidifier and the leaves kind of were a little droopy and like that. I put this by my humidifier. This plant loves humidity. From what I understand, they prefer humidity levels between 60 and 75%. Most people cannot obtain that without it being in a greenhouse or something like that. I don't have a greenhouse. I try to keep my humidity at least between 55 and 60%, and this plant loves it. So since it does like it so much, I always make sure that it's pretty close to my humidifier. The Paraiso Verde is susceptible to the same kind of pests that most philodendrons are. That would be your mealybugs, aphids, scale, and spider mites. So I highly recommend when you water your plants, just give it a quick once over. I am a hands-on kind of person. I like to handle my leaves. I check them out anytime I'm watering a plant. And that way, if something is going on with the plant, I'll detect it before, it starts, dropping leaves and things like that, and go ahead and treat it. I did not see anywhere that said that this plant will go dormant in cold temperatures. However, like most plants in the winter, they do grow a lot slower than they do, say, in spring and summer during the warmer months. When they're in their growing season, they're going to require more water. When they're not growing fast, they're going to require a lot less water. So these plants do like to remain somewhat moist. So the soil should be at least kind of damp at all times. It's one of those plants you don't want to let totally dry out at any point. Some people do the finger test. For some reason, I just don't like sticking my finger down into the plant because I'm scared I'm going to damage roots. I'm just that person. But if you are someone who does the finger test, you stick your finger down in your pot about inch and a half. If it is dry, then you would probably want to go ahead and water your plant at that point. And I use a water meter, a moisture meter, and I stick it in my pot, not for it to tell me whether or not I should water, but I like to use that to see where the moisture is. So that's the method that I use, and I just find that it disturbs the soil a lot less. So that's what I do. Since this plant does like to remain a little on the moist side, I don't use the same potting mix that I use for most of my philodendrons, because for this one, I need a mixture that's going to retain some moisture. So whereas I'll normally use like 50% soil, 50% perlite or bark, or a combination of the two. With this one, I use 60% soil and 40% perlite or bark, give or take. Okay, you definitely need something that's going to retain some moisture. This plant likes bright light, okay? It is a climber in the rainforest. It would be found under the canopy of trees climbing up the trunk of a tree. So mottled light, intermittent light, never direct bright sunlight, because these leaves will burn. Keeping in mind what I said about if you give it all the light that it wants, it's going to give you a solid green leaf. I keep this plant over in my plant nook, where you can see there is a grow light as well as a south and west facing window. However, the sunlight coming through those windows is filtered through some shutters, so I can control the amount of light that comes through. This is where it was when it put out the solid green leaf. I am still keeping it over here in the plant nook, but I have moved it down to the floor, closer to the humidifier, and hopefully all will be well. I have found this plant extremely easy to care for. I would actually classify it in terms of ease of care right there with the pothos. I would not hesitate to recommend this plant to a beginner. The only reason that it probably wouldn't be a beginner plant is at the time of this recording, this plant is very hard to come across, and when you do find it, it is pricey. Other than that, I don't see any obstacles with this plant. It's a beautiful plant. So that's about it. The Philodendron Paraiso Verde. Thank you so much for watching. Take care. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.